I'm gonna have one.
No, I think we should close it and stop. It's late.
We could do that too.
Guys, you guys are hungry. There's food over there.
Or we can start and take a little break and
It's that
I
time.
don't think we timed this, did we?
No.
Go ahead.
Or
to me?
Yeah, you start it off and we'll just make this a class, but an interactive class. So ask questions, any questions you have about anything having to do with the closing process or title.
I'm Amanda with Partners Title. I've been here for 11 and a half years, I think. How long have you been here? You've been here?
I've been here 12.
So I'm like right behind you. So 11 and a half years I've been with Partners Title. Our corporate is based out of the cities. That's where Tricia is joining us from. And Tricia is in charge of.
I was brought on as their kind of a operations person regionally to help with training, education, recruiting, building new offices, which I'm happy to say we just opened up another office in Eden Prairie this last week. So we're
Maybe what do we have for offices?
we have 13 offices now, and our next office location we're looking to do is south of the river. So it would be like Shakopee, Apple Valley, Lakeville, Farmington, that kind of area. So
We have one in Albert Lea.
we're in Albert Lea. We got Maple Grove, Coon Rapids, Maplewood, 2 in Woodbury, Bloomington, kind of on the cusp of Bloomington and Medina, France, right there. Hudson.
And we definitely utilize them because we have a lot of people going back and forth between cities. I've utilized Albert Lea. Albert Lea has utilized Rochester. The cities has utilized Rochester. So it's really kind of a nice little circle that we have going on. Everybody helping each other out.
Yeah, I mean, one of the closers in office in Bloomington went down to Albert Lea and worked down there for a couple days because we had someone out. So we're all over the place. We support each other very well.
I know 5 years ago you helped my son.
Yeah.
He was closing in Wayzata, so somebody from Woodbury actually went over there and closed it.
And I live in Waconia, so I want an office out there. I want one like over by Delano and blah, blah. I have all these ideas, but Connie's like, slow down. Staying organized first. So, well, what about you guys? So I know we have a new agent in here. So how about you? Your name?
Brand new. My name's Brad Engen. I started in
September. Well, good. Congratulations.
First time holding license, your license?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and Chris, how long? Or city,
Yeah,
sorry.
I
figured
was licensed in
Kristen.
the late 80s. Started in
Okay. Okay.
Gentleman back there.
New agent, first time license. After 3 million miles in the semi, I decided to find something that's really easier on the body.
Put your feet on the ground for a while. There you go.
They hooked me up with Debbie, so she's pulling the new kid along.
Well, good. Yeah, mentors are important, that's for sure. We know a little bit about you already.
Yep, I'm Debbie, seasoned.
Well, good. I'm glad that you're here with the new agent, so you can give me feedback too if there's anything you think I missed in this presentation today that we can help the agents understand.
Debbie, are you doing the poll right now?
I am not, I'm
Okay.
taking a break.
Okay.
I've done 12.
I'm doing my first one.
You will love it.
Doing my first one for partners. We're doing it for it's the 23rd down in Minneapolis. So
Which one are you doing?
the second step.
Okay,
Second,
if you get a chance to do it again, go to 7th step.
7th step. Okay. That's my favorite number.
That's graduation. And
Oh.
it's just a really, there's cool exercise.
Oh, neat. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
If you get a chance to.
Yeah. I'll make time. That sounds great. Definitely.
There's different things through each course.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so the woman that I'm doing it with, they stayed through the whole thing last year, and of course, my leader was like, you guys probably don't have to stay the whole day, and I'm like, I want to hear what they talk about, so.
We will help you with your business.
Yeah, I think it's interchangeable, definitely, yeah.
Tamara Graham. I've been selling real estate for 14 years. I've been with Keller Williams for about 11.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I use Amanda for most of my. We just actually closed something up in Bloomington. The Bloomington office.
Yep, Alana.
Atlanta closed it, decided to close at the table.
That was a nice office up there.
Yeah, you gotta come see our,
Yeah.
Eden Prairie office,
Yeah.
yeah, and I love Alana, she's been, since I've joined, I've worked hand in hand with her and trying to help her build her book of business, so.
Yeah.
Hope everything went smooth.
Everything was awesome. It was
Oh,
a
good.
really nice office.
Well, good, yeah, good deal.
Dustin Evers, I'm a new agent a month and actually on her team.
Okay, great.
And Dustin actually bought a home through Partners.
So we,
Yes, I did.
so so you'll kind of
This is
relate a
great.
little bit to this, I kind of, but, well, good, thanks for having me, you guys. The things on your job that I handed out, we're gonna go over PowerPoint, but I did hand out a couple of things for you. One, a little overview of title insurance. Not as in-depth as I'd like. Title insurance is a different conversation. Closing and title are two separate things. Oh, yeah, definitely. Title side is one side, the closing side is the money side. But the first thing I just wanted, this closing process sheet I kind of just put together on a whim. It kind of just shows you, oops, I'll pause it first. It kind of shows you high level the path in which a closing kind of takes place in conjunction with the realtor at the bottom, having to write the contract. Oh, excuse me, with my glasses at. And the middle, realtor's in the middle, contract, the property inspection, the appraisal performed, kind of the gas that kind of runs the cars, like right in here, and then the lender on the bottom and the title closing on top kind of go hand in hand with the contract. Certain things don't get done until the appraisal is done, and certain things don't get done until the inspections are done. So it just kind of shows you a path in which it takes and how all three segments work together along the way. But it's very high level. I just thought it was kind of easy for you guys to keep look at and know high level how this thing moves. All right, we're going to go over a PowerPoint. We're going to talk about the closing process today. This is really kind of behind the curtain a little bit about what we do. You guys hand in your contract and then hope for you hand in your contract and you hope for the best, right? So okay, here it goes, and let's just what do I do now, kind of thing. So I wanted to create something that would sit with the agents and go over kind of behind the curtain of what we do and the steps that we take. In conjunction with the lenders, with the other title company, because in this state, we have two separate title companies that handle each side. They all don't go to one. So there's that ping pong thing going back and forth between the two. Oh yeah, you step out. Okay. And things that will make your life easier. At first, it's going to look like it's a lot of work because there's certain things that we need in order to get our process moving as quickly as possible. At the end of the day, we work for you. And the goal for us is to get out of the gate as fast as we can with the most information that we can have in order to not have to call you and ask you, do you have this? Where's this? What's the buyer's phone number? What's the address that the buyer currently lives at? Those kinds of things. So we kind of put together the steps in which we take. Seller's closing process, we'll go over that one first, and then we'll talk about the buyer's closing process afterwards. And so step one, the purchase contract is fully executed by all parties. Listing agent sends fully executed contract to the title closer, and then the listing agent, in a perfect world, would provide the contact information for the seller, the selling agent who's handling the buy side, the buyer's title company, if they know it, and the commission and admin fee. If you're sending an email with the contract, those are the things that we're going to see.
And there's, looking at the contract, there's a lot of the agents kind of use the same title company and they kind of know where to go. A lot of the brokerages have title companies within their office or in the same building, and generally they do go to the ones that are right across the hall. So I can, if you don't get that information, that piece, a lot of the times I can figure out. It is helpful if you have it though on the green sheet. The green sheet is kind of the first spot to check if for phone numbers. When I do receive a contract, I do like all the pieces to the puzzle. Because in the listing contract, you do have phone numbers and emails all on that listing page. It does mention whether there's a broker admin fee. We used to have commission statements created for us. Now the agents are responsible to let us know what the commission breakdown is. So there's definitely room for notes on the green sheet.
And that's a great place to put your
Utilize that.
expectations too. You may be
Yeah.
working with a customer that you don't want us to call them. Or you may be an agent that never wants us to call your customers. You want everything to go through you, or vice versa. So if you are an agent that is okay with us contacting your customer at any time for questions on things, introducing ourselves, giving them a higher level overview of what to expect, great. If you have that one customer you just don't want us to talk to because they've been kind of touchy, make sure that you tell us that. Because otherwise it's just systems go and we're gonna run with it. So your expectations are very, very, very important to us right out of the gate.
And a
Of what you
lot,
want.
with some of our customers now too, a lot more preferring text. That's the only way you get a response. You don't get a response by email or phone call anymore. I am open to texting as well. So I've been texting with a lot of clientele lately.
That's
So,
awesome. And so this stuff, the first section is important because, you know, we have support. We have a customer service team that opens up all the orders for us. And so we have all that information in there. By the time we get it, we can just run and go do the things that we have to do to make sure we're going to meet your closing deadline and make sure that we're going to get stuff to the lender timely so the loan docs can get done, et cetera, et cetera. Next section, things to provide. The MLS sheet is always helpful. And the reason I say that is because it has, if there's a homeowners association on it, we know. And if we see that, we're like, oh, we don't have to wait till the commitment comes out to know that there's a homeowners association. We can just go off the MLS. So it's helpful. We don't require any of this, of course, but it's helpful information for us to have. Copy of the earnest money check receipt. Sometimes the lenders will reach out to us and ask us for a copy of that. If we don't have it, we're going to call you. And then you're going to have to get to it. And we're going to get to the lender. And then it kind of goes around the circle.
They're not familiar.
I know. Homeowners Association name, that kind of falls in with the MLS sheet, and the CIC disclosure, which is something I think Amanda
The
likes.
CIC disclosure just gives, that's what the association, the management or president or accountant fills out, to let you know kind of what's paid, what, if there's any assessments, what's coming due for if there's going to be levied or pending assessments with the association, gives who the insurance company is, just gives all the fine details for your client. They have to be signed, correct me if I'm wrong, on every association and included in the purchase agreement for the new ones. So you have to have the CIC disclosure. It's kind of one of those last pieces that straggled in down the road because you're waiting for a third party to actually fill it out and send it back in.
Another party, another hand in the cookie jar, right?
Yeah.
That we have to wait on.
So sometimes they're in the packet, you have in advance, but sometimes they come later, and I just like to have those because they're a handy tool for us because we do have to speak with them. We can certainly email this out too if you want.
Yeah.
We can certainly. Okay.
You'll have all this.
too.
You guys will get a copy of all this stuff.
Yep.
And then the amount of the HOA dues, I don't know, is the amount of the homeowners dues on the MLS sheet too? Or is that just the whole?
Typically, but I wouldn't say it's bulletproof.
It's not bulletproof. Okay, so we have something, because sometimes the lender will call and want to know that. Lenders are calling us for things and we don't have what we need, and then we're going this way and then we're going, you know, so you can see how. So if it's on the MLS sheet, or if you have it, that's good information.
Also,
Yeah.
if there's, I didn't think about this before, but if there's a shared well, that is a very common document. There should be a well agreement for shared wells, and that could maybe be brought up at the time of listing.
I'm finding 90% of the time there's no agreement in writing.
Yeah, because it started this well thing late in the game.
Yeah, the lenders are the ones that are driving this force. They want to see that well agreement because in the secondary market, when these loans are being bought up, they're finding in foreclosures, issues have come about if there's no well agreements, and then they have to pay for things to be fixed.
Yeah, so it's good questions to ask. And a lot of, some of these things, you know, when you're taking your listing, these are things that you can talk about.
And we have ananother slide
With that
that
too,
shows
yeah.
some.
Exactly. Marital status, very important.
I know, I'm closing on one that we don't have.
Oh, no.
Oh, on Brian's?
He said, we've never signed anything.
No, he went to sign. So what happens with well agreements, once they're established with that subdivision, when it was developed in 1980, and they had it signed, it transfers with everybody that comes in on that property, transfers with every exchange.
The
So,
land.
So we can, do you want me to search that? You've been asked for it already?
No.
Oh, okay.
Just FYI.
When I did the numbers, I looked for that to see if it was shared or not. And I might even have it in the old file, because we would have needed.
Oh, I bet we do.
Yeah.
I bet we
So-
do. Okay.
Okay,
And then marital status, very important. And I have some horror stories that we'll share with later and why that's so important. And we'll talk more about that, but we need to know, you go to your listing, you're meeting Mr. Smith, and you don't have a conversation about whether he's married or not. In his mind, he's not married because he's separated. Well, guess what? You're married. So we need to make sure we know the status of,
one that could be missed too is if somebody buys a home and they're single, and then they get married and divorced before they go ahead and sell. That party, even though they weren't listed on the property, say they never refinanced, we didn't know what, that person still has interest in the property at some point.
in our seller info form that we send out, and we'll get to that too, it asks those questions. It goes to the seller to fill out. We've had situations where married, divorced, and so the one wife, the recent divorced person signed, but what about the one before that? She's long gone. We need a divorce decree, we need all that information, so.
Just remember, everybody, 1 to 5.
Yeah, or sometimes 5 to sell, depending on how many times they've been married. No, okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So that information, all great information, we get as much as we can. You can guarantee that you'll hear very little from us, and then we can just start running with it and get what we need to get you to the closing table. So what happens then is the customer service department opens up the transaction. They'll go into our system, they'll get everything plugged in for us, and then the closer will receive a notification that it's opened, and the listing agent will receive notification and a thank you that the transaction's opened as well.
So I'm curious, for those that I've had contact on, are you receiving your notification? Because we weren't 100% set up that way, and then they just recently started, so you didn't receive a notification on Brian.
And we can
Okay.
turn it off or
We're gonna-
on, depending on.
We've got, the systems we've had a new system for about a year and a half, 2 years. And working out all the kinks, and I just wanted to wait until the system was full up and running.
So
we're
that
gonna
she'll turn
start
it on.
Getting,
I do have a question about something, and I had a couple companies do this now, where they send me all these papers. You and I had this little
Yes.
conversation.
Burnett title.
Matter of fact, Edina's doing it now,
Oh, okay.
because I just called Foley's, who the seller has said we're going there.
Mhm.
And they said, well, we thought you were closing an Edina title. I said, no, the buyer is, they're with an Edina agent. You're closing both of her deals. Oh, we weren't aware of that. I said, I sent you all the paperwork.
Right.
What
Right.
is it? It's the portal?
So they send out, their title work and their disclosures on fees and their FDIC insured to everybody involved in the transaction. They send it to the agent, they send it to the seller, they send it to the buyer, they send it to everybody.
They should say.
I know, we have to correct it every time.
Yeah, I'm going, what
Every
is
time.
going on? Why do they think they can do that?
Well, Partners doesn't do that. That's my
I'm just
part.
curious,
Yeah.
do they think that just because they've started it, that you'll just stay with them then?
No, I don't know. I know that's my prior life. It's part of my
Okay.
prior life is that I think if I'm being honest,
It's a marketing,
it
a
a
little.
little bit of marketing, but it's also such a big operation that maybe some people don't know what's happening. Yeah, I don't know. That seems strange to me, knowing that I came from there.
But it's standard practice.
It's standard practice, okay. So we don't do that. So the listed agent, you'll just receive a notification. Thank you for the
We can't stop
transaction.
it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so, like I said, they'll receive a notification of the open transaction. Then what happens is the closer will then start her work. She'll make contact with the seller, maybe introduce herself, give them a high-level overview of what's gonna happen in the next few days. They're gonna receive something by email or by mail, asking for information. Just have a conversation with them so they know who Amanda is.
I do contact them, because we have to receive their loan information, where they're going, just authorization to obtain their payoff. We ask them, you know, if they're involved in bankruptcies, divorce, disclosure proceedings, unsatisfied judgments, or taxes against them, because those all affect title. But I typically contact them and ask them if it's okay to email it, because email seems to be the quickest response.
Or if you know that they prefer email, put it on your green sheet, then she knows that she can do
I
that.
think we are still working on an e-signature.
Yeah, we're working on that and,
So just like your contracts, right now we have to have wet signatures. But
We're working on it.
an e-signature.
there's some good things happening next year with Close Simple and all kinds of neat stuff happening, which she'll introduce to you at the meetings. We'll speak to those at the sales meetings. And she'll also contact the buyer's title company just to make sure that they're working together, they know who's who, and et cetera.
Just a real quick cap. So we're talking about title commitment for the new agents. Title commitment is what happens down at the county recorder's office. All property is tracked by a legal description, and we, as title companies, whoever's representing the buyer prepares a title commitment, which tells what we need in order to turn around and sell this property free and clear, get everybody off the record, what has to be paid off, judgments, bankruptcies, if there was a divorce and they could see it, what has to be recorded.
Yes, so there's two separate sides. Yeah, so there's two separate sides. There's the seller side and the buyer side. The buyer side, which we're going to review here shortly, is the one who prepares the commitment and they insure the deal. When they get the commitment, they send it to the seller side, and the seller does all the clearing of it. They do all the work. This is where all the work takes place, right here on the seller side. So on the seller deals. So she'll make contact with them, and then she'll work with the sellers to schedule pre-sign, to accommodate the pre-sign.
So all of our sellers down here, we don't come to one table. We pre-sign all of our sellers.
Not like in the metro where everyone comes together. We certainly have sellers that pre-sign up there, but on the closing day, everybody shows up together to the table and then they.
And I think they're even getting more and more sellers pre-signing.
Yeah, I don't like everybody at the table, quite frankly. I'm from the West Coast. West Coast, we don't even do anything like this here.
We go down here.
So, and I like it, it's fine. I don't think that people should be sitting at the table sharing social security numbers. I think that this is good down here. I like it.
And
Okay.
I sat in the one in the cities, I thought, wow, this is really weird.
Yeah, you get used to it. I mean, it's a rat race. It's a fire drill. Okay, next slide. And so after that,
We're having issues.
oh,
You just hit the arrow.
I don't know if I can. My glasses on. I don't even know how to use this thing. Next slide. Oh, here it is. Oh, here. Wait.
Buyer's title company always prepares the
Oh, the title
commitment.
company.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Don't think you got
I was
a
gonna
job.
say,
not
I was gonna
agent.
say, I've never heard of that.
Sorry, no.
You don't
Okay.
have a new job.
So
No,
then,
no.
so then finally, we made our introductions. We've got the file all set up. We're good to go. Now we're waiting for the commitment. So oftentimes we have to, we're waiting. So we're waiting on somebody else to give us something in order to do something. So again, we're dependent on someone else. So that's sometimes where that gap of time can get large sometimes, especially with the Edinas, who will never send a commitment out until the lender's title application is given to them. We get our commitments out in 2 days. We don't care if the lender hasn't given us their title application yet to put the loan amount and the proposed insured for the lender, because we want the title company to get to work. Sometimes we have to wait depending on who the other agent company is. So we get the commitment and then we get to work. We clear a title, we order payoffs, HOA, judgments, liens, and address any other items that are needed. If your seller's in a trust, if they're a corporation, an LLC, there's things that we'll need in order to submit the title for review. So depending on what those are. After that, as that's all happening, the closer will prepare, the selling closer will prepare seller documents and send preliminary Alta CD to the buyer's closing agent requesting the final when they have their final stuff done for the seller side, whatever.
So nothing's final for numbers. Sometimes we just prepared a preliminary on one that's closing in December, but nothing gets finalized until all I's have looked upon it, the lender, the seller's title company, the buyer's title company.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then the auto statements are delivered to the listing agent once we have the final back from the buyer side. So the seller's title company puts in their stuff, puts in the payoffs, the HOAs, and then they send it over to the buyer's title company, and then they keep it for a while. Then they wait for the loan docs to come in, and then they compile everything. They do the prorations for all the stuff, and then they send it back before closing, hopefully a couple days before closing. At that point, we will then send the statement to the listing agent and the seller for review, or just the listing agent if they don't want us to contact the seller directly. That's the piece that we need to know.
I'm working on that.
If the seller's pre-signing, the closer will then request from the buyer's title company the documents that they require the seller sign. Can't just sign our documents, they have docs. So now we have to get docs from them to bring to us so we can get those signed, like their privacy policy, things like that. So we'll get those documents, and then the closer will prepare the power of attorney and then do her pre-sign.
So on all of our sellers, because we pre-signed, there are documents that the seller still needs to sign at closing. We have Nikki, the admin in the office, and everybody does this down here because we all pre-sign our sellers. So this is done on all of our seller files, that they sign a limited power of attorney only pertaining to the real property transaction, wherever their property is, by legal description, and they can just sign all the miscellaneous documents that come in on the date of closing.
So like the buyer's getting an FHA loan, okay? Seller's already pre-signed. Well, there's miscellaneous documents in the loan package that require the seller and the agent to sign, having to do with the FHA insured amount or the appraisal amount or whatever. And so seller's gone, they've already signed. So that power of attorney would allow that person to sign those documents so the closing can happen.
It's nothing that we record on
No.
public record.
No.
It's all for internal documents.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's exactly how we explain it at the table. Because some people get a little leery.
And it's
but-
only pertinent to that
Yes,
transaction.
yeah.
So it doesn't go beyond that. So, okay.
Oh, there
Oh, that was, okay. So then the buyer, up in my world, they all get together, but down here, the closing is conducted and finalized at the buyer's title company, or actually the pre-sign. Seller receives copies of the pre-sign, and then the buyer's title company will have their closing.
So buyer's title company always cuts all the checks. Cuts everybody's, it cuts the commission checks, it cuts the seller's checks.
Agents checks.
It's agent, yeah, it cuts all the checks involved, because they are the insuring company. They have to be in charge of all the funds.
And since the seller side is not there at that time, Amanda takes her documents and goes over there and exchanges the documents that she had signed, the warranty deed, the things that need to be recorded in exchange for the checks, and then brings them back. Once that happens, the buyer's title company will wire out the payoff funds or send them FedEx, whatever they do, and then deliver the seller's proceeds. So if sellers want it wired, or if they want a check, she'll bring it back, whichever.
On the payoffs, we always do 2 business days past closing, because nothing is instantaneous. Even though we may wire, there are certain things we just cannot control. We can't control the Fed. We can't control posting of payments. There is U.S. Bank Home Equity. They will receive a check one day, and they might not post it for 10 days.
But it's dated.
But it's dated, it's
Yeah.
stamped, but they still might not post it, pay it off. For whatever reason, we have no
Wanna make
idea.
sure-
When you ship something off, it's only as good as the people that are doing the work on the other end, even the Fed, all the inputting wires
Oh,
back
is
and
that
forth.
what?
Well, my
Okay.
dad used
Got
to
it.
pay some stuff with his Vanguard account,
Got it.
and they would hold that check for 10 days before they disperse the money to anybody. And I'm like, seriously? It's a money market account. Oh, I'm serious, that's what it is. They wanna
That's
make sure
kind
that
of,
it
yeah,
works.
Got it.
That's what it is.
yeah, okay, so
Weird.
then the buyer title company sends all the documents to the county for recording. And then hopefully, well, we don't want to talk about the buyer side, we'll do that in a minute, but yeah, sellers are on their way and we're good to go. Seller transactions. We have some of this on a buyer side too, but not as much, because sellers is really important. These are all the things that we need to know as soon as possible on a transaction. And these things are nice little questions for you at the listing appointment, the boundary lines. Because we're not like North Dakota. We don't require a survey on every purchase and sale. North Dakota requires a survey on every transaction. We don't do that here. We do a visual inspection. We go out and we look. We make sure we're seeing that the garage is within the lot and block area. It's not over on the neighbor's yard. You know, we do a visual from a title perspective, but we don't do surveys. So if there are things that the seller may know, they should tell us.
There are some things that we take a little lightly, like fences on property lines, retaining walls.
It comes up at closing sometimes.
It does,
We don't.
but there are certain things that, depending on how long they've been there,
We just don't
we're
know.
talking structural. We're talking permanent
A
shed.
shared driveway. You
Yeah.
got your property's landlocked and the guy back here is selling, even using the same driveway, where there's a shared driveway agreement. You're driving down the driveway, that might come to mind. You're driving down one driveway to get the house to the back. When that driveway goes to the house in the front, that might be something. So it doesn't happen very often, but it's things to think about.
And the real resolution on that, or resolve, is a survey. It's locating the actual pins. I have a deal going on right now where somebody come out and put whole new pins on to gain 3 feet on their property, taking from the neighbors. They just had somebody drop a pin in. That doesn't count. The plat is recorded
Yeah. Nice
down at
job.
the county
That's right.
recorder's office.
Yeah, that isn't gonna work.
And people can't just go around changing property lines.
Mhm.
There is documented to protect
Yeah.
people. Surveys are the only way to really, really fix a solid dispute.
But this slide is actually a really good slide to keep with you when you go on your listing appointment. And you may not, certainly don't ask all of them, but you may have a few that you may add. It's in the corporation. If you know the property is held in the corp, we're gonna need copies of the corporation docs. We're gonna need copies of the trust. We're gonna need that stuff. And so if they're packing boxes and all their stuff's packed up, right? Oh, well, where is it? How are we gonna find it? Now we have a delay because and it's happened before. So this isn't, this is actually a really great slide to keep with you. The liens, we'll find out. We'll find out about that when we get the commitment in. We'll find out about some of the other stuff too. But
Now with liens, sometimes there are people who own their properties outright. They're buying a new property, they're closing on the property they're buying before they're selling, and they're doing a bridge loan. Sometimes those loans don't show up title. If you get wind of something like that, we'd like to know, because that mortgage isn't necessarily recorded before they turn around and sell, and then we don't know about it. And then it's a potential issue down the road. Now, we've been blessed enough within our company that things have gotten paid, but it's happened, it's real. We're in that time where people have homes paid for, and they're downsizing and they want to buy this other property. This is like them going in with cash. They take out a loan against their existing to purchase the new home in cash, and then that new mortgage, if they do it within, a couple weeks of closing, it might not be there.
yeah, it's important.
It might not get known about.
Same with equity lines of credit. They make, well, it's a revolving, it's like a credit card. It's just, well, it's tied to the property. And just because it has a zero balance, you still need to order the statement, because there's probably some fees that are associated with doing the release, and you still have to order that statement. So even if they have an equity line with a zero balance or it's never been used, still have to have that payoff submitted to us. Work completed. You guys, oops. Oh, we're way back, okay. So, for you new agents, you guys know the mechanics lien rule here? We call it broken priority, but for work completed,
Just
120
when
days.
a contractor performs work on the home.
Yeah.
they have 120 days
to leave the property.
lien from the last time they set foot on that property.
If they're not
If
paid.
they're not paid.
So if they're not paid, they can leave. So what that will do is, and then that lien will go, we've already recorded the mortgage, we've recorded the deed. 120 days passes, the buyer's living there, and all of a sudden the work was never paid, or we had a paid receipt, but maybe they wrote a check and then they stopped payment on the check. So we need a lien waiver to make sure that the contractor is signing off that they were paid. Because what happens is that they file a lien, now the lender isn't in first position anymore. We've just jeopardized the lender's position, and so we take the hit for that. That's gonna be a claim and a loss that we're gonna have to deal with. So it's very important when work is being done to make sure that you're working with Amanda directly to find out what she's gonna need based on that situation at the time. So I think that's good. Relationship issues, number one at the top. I can't stress that enough. That is where all of our problems happen. I'm not joking. 90% of the issues that we have with closings has to do with relationship issues. All right, buyer side.
Do you have any questions about
Yeah.
seller side? Where we,
Fun stuff. You guys want to come over to the title side now, don't you?
and this is just kind of a
I'm just
backdrop.
joking.
We're not looking to overwhelm you. We're not
Yeah.
looking to scare you. It's just these are real people, real life situations. We are moving faster now than we ever have, and
It's the number one question I get when I talk to agents. It's like, what's your timeline? Or what goes on in your office? Like, how does the process work? Like, they don't really have a picture of it. So that's how I came up with this, is to kind of just give you guys an overview of what the steps that we take to get to a closed transaction. So, all right. Buyer side, same kind of thing.
oh, I missed it. Seller net sheet. Those are very,
Yes.
very important. I love them. Your seasoned agents will tell you that they love them, they use them. Nikki is gonna email this out as an Excel spreadsheet. This is more agency side, but it is a tool for you and I both. You want to turn on it?
She's like, sure, I'll have another one.
But it's just you fill in the sales price at the top, you got yours. I'm gonna have her send the Excel spreadsheet out again after the meeting here, but you enter, it's when you're, for the new ones, maybe Debbie.
Yeah.
You wanna, when you're signing a listing and you're getting your listing and you wanna estimate what they're gonna net and you wanna see where they high and low range but when you actually sell is where I come into play, is just to see where you're at. This is a number, you can have them sign and dated to know what they're roughly gonna estimate, or net from the sale of their home.
This is the sheet that they're gonna say to you, you get that much money.
They're gonna be like, yeah, the first thing they'll focus on
Trust
is the
me, because
commission.
it's right here emboldened for them, and you're gonna say, yes, and it's probably not enough.
It's never enough. Some
No.
of the houses you guys walk into, I'm sure it's just like, oh my gosh.
And then it also shows them, what I always do is I put the worst case scenario as the third one, the best case scenario as the first one. Because they're never, I shouldn't say never, now they've been getting full price. However, there's been times when they're getting 20 to 30,000 less than what they were asked.
And we'll hit that again.
Yeah, we will.
It's the peaks and valleys.
It's starting to shift now. People say it's not, and it is. What happens though is that you give them these scenarios, so at least they have an understanding that these are an estimate of all your costs. And then that way they look at it and they understand exactly what's happening and am I gonna have enough money for this next place or am I not? Or am I better off to just stay put?
It's better than coming to closing and realizing they're short.
Exactly.
Or they're short in what they're gonna net and they're gonna owe money at
And
closing.
that's happened before too.
Yes.
And
Right now, we haven't had to deal with that, but we were in a time where
Absolutely.
we were dealing with it all the time. I mean, for a good solid year and a half, right? at least 2 years,
Absolutely.
maybe? I mean, it was,
Maybe
Was
two.
this all during when the whole crisis was going on?
9, 10, 8.
yeah.
Wow.
yeah,
Wow, okay, well,
It's real.
It is
Yeah.
very real.
but it's good, it's something to actually give them tangible that I'm sure they appreciate.
I actually would send some of these along in my short sale,
Oh.
just to prove to them.
Mhm.
they
It's a
don't
tool.
have money.
It's
They
a
don't have
tool,
money.
Yeah,
for you, and again, I've referenced it, just if I put numbers together and the sellers got questions, we go back and reference the seller net sheet and say, this is where where we were at, and they sign off on it because that's our only proof that they really saw that one.
and not only that, when you get to the table and now we're $3,000 off, that will help them understand why there's a difference, because now something's happened, and so you,
Been there.
yeah, so now you can say, well, let's use this as the baseline, and the 3,000 is, oh, it's because we had to do this reinspection and we had to do this, that's why we didn't know about that at the time of that.
Just
Same
to
thing.
back up, do we have assessments on here? Sellers, typically, most of your contracts have to pay assessments, and we're talking about numbers. That's maybe something that you wouldn't always know. Most pending assessments, they're already gonna be in your taxes. So when you look at your tax sheet, kind of make note, then, make note whether
Yeah.
those assessments are there, and then they'll prompt you to further question. There might still be, if it's a street or city or sewer and water, they're spread out over 10, 12 years. And that's gonna be charged on, every tax year. The buyer can assume that, negotiated price, but most of the time the seller has to pay the balance. They're anywhere from 1,000 to, I've had 10, 15,000, if it was just put on, so.
Yeah, and that's the horror story I'll tell you about at the very end when it comes to title insurance about an assessment and why you would need title insurance. We'll get to that at the very end. It's the fun stuff. All right, we're gonna zip through the buyer side because it's really pretty much the same as seller. Not so, a little bit the same, but not completely because you're dealing with the lender. Same kind of stuff. Purchase contract fully executed, gets sent over from the agent. As much information as possible would be great. Seller title company, good information so I know who to send my commitment to so they can get to work. Customer service will open the transaction, closer will receive notification, the selling agent will receive notification, and customer service will also send a preliminary CD to the lender right away if we have the lender information. If you didn't give us the lender information, the preliminary numbers aren't going to go from customer service over to the lender. So your buyer has a lender, who is it? Then customer service will send that preliminary CD with their fees. So now we've already gotten the ball rolling with the lender.
I get a lot of questions from agents asking what title fees are for their buyer who's purchasing with a mortgage. The lender does quote all the title fees in their loan estimate, but we don't have to double up on quoting fees. Where we would come in on a buyer for quoting fees would be a cash deal. That would be all the title fees on a cash deal because there's no lender involved.
Yeah. And then once as soon as that goes out, the title department begins work on the title commitment, and currently our turnaround time is 2 days, which is great. Again, the closer makes contact with their buyer and the seller's title company. We'll send out, okay, so we're gonna talk about this right here. So right when that happens, the closer sends out a buyer welcome letter, introducing the company and giving Amanda's name and, that they've received the contract, and then sends out the wire instructions that way too. Now I know we take checks down here and that's great and that's not changing, but we do send the wire instructions with the letter. So if the buyer wants to wire, they certainly can. They certainly can wire. They don't have to do a cashier's check. It's completely up to them, especially if they're maybe moving from out of state and they just want to get the money here or whatever. The only piece I want to add to that, and there's all this wire fraud conversation going on, and
Does everybody know about the wire fraud?
it's been happening. Okay, it's been bad.
The wire what?
Wire
The wire
fraud.
fraud.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. We need to have a conversation about that. Maybe I come out for the sales meeting.
In a nutshell, there are people that have tapped into real estate, realizing there's a lot of money floating around, and they're trying to sneak in the middle and redirect people's wires. buyers and sellers wires to their own personal accounts. Those funds are wired out. As soon as it hits the account, they disappear, can't retract them, money's still gone.
There's hackers that are currently monitoring emails. Our emails are encrypted, lenders' emails are encrypted and secure behind firewalls, but agents aren't, and neither are buyers. So there's these conversations going on back and forth about the closing.
I don't know,
date.
is Keller Williams?
Well, agents usually have Gmails or
I
Hotmail
don't
accounts.
even email that
They
kind of
have,
stuff.
okay,
So,
I never do.
so
We have phone conversations, so they're gonna have to tap my phone, I guess.
I like the phone conversations are great. So in any event, we don't send wire instructions by email at all, ever. And the message that, and we'll talk about wire fraud, and I think I need to come back down for the sales meeting and we'll do a presentation on that. I have a small little blip for you guys to watch. But we send the welcome letter out with wire instructions. If the buyer wants to wire their funds, that's great. The message to them is, always tell your buyer, if you ever receive wire instructions attached to an email, pick up the phone and call me. That's all, that's period. End of story. And maybe if you send in a cashier's check, maybe they're doing a cashier's check and they get an email from, that looks like it's coming from you, and it says, oh, you know what, Partners Title doesn't want to take your cashier's check, could you do a wire instead? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, sure, they don't know the difference because it looks like it's coming from you. And they don't ask you, they just take the wire instructions and then they go to the bank and they wire funds and now the funds are in Russia. So even though they're doing cashier's checks does not mean that they cannot get into your email and make it look like it's coming from you, attaching wire instructions and telling your customer to wire funds. So that conversation about wire instructions attached to an email is a must. Must. We've been targeted a few times. There's 5 companies up in the metro center or metro area that have been targeted and have lost money. Dana wrote a check for $385,000. A lot of title companies have been hit. We've been lucky enough because we've educated our staff on how to find these things and we've been targeted, but no, we haven't lost anything. So we go to snail mail. Like wire instructions are going in the mail. We're not doing anything by email. So, and I didn't think about that. The cashier's check, that's great that we take them here. That's fine, but what if an email goes out? So it's a good conversation to make sure you're having with your customer. So we send the welcome letter out. We contact the seller title company. We make contact with the buyer's lender, find out who we're working with, et cetera, what they need from us, if anything. And then
on the buyer's closing, we're waiting a lot for lender.
Yep.
I mean, we get our title work in and out in 48 hours, but then it's hurry up and wait for us on that side as well, because the lender has all their conditions to meet, red tape, appraisals, bank statements, verification of employment, a laundry list of items that they have to go through to just verify that, yes, they have that pre-approval, but now they have to really prove that what they started with is what it is.
This side of the transaction, I feel, is more, at least in our company, we're trying to be really proactive because I don't think our closers, we don't want us to sit and wait. You know, we wait, but we're checking in with the seller side. Have you ordered your payoff yet? Where are my numbers? We're checking in with the lender. What do you need from me? So we're constantly having to go backwards to make sure everyone's giving us what we need in order to get it to the lender to get loan docs. So a lot of babysitting, I think, a little bit too with the other vendors to try to make sure that they're doing their job so we can do ours. Again, we're dependent on them. So, but we do. We have a file. We just wait for the stuff to come in and we go from there. The commitment gets delivered. Seller's title company will clear the title, give us their estimated Alta or closing statement, and provide all the backup documentation, the copy of the payoff, all that kind of stuff.
So one note too is sometimes we represent buyers and sellers. So the individual, the closer, is doing.
That's awesome. That's so great when we have that going on, because then we control everything. We control the world when we have both sides, right? Because we can just don't have to wait on anyone. And then same thing, preliminary Alta and CD are prepared. Seller's company will provide statement with the closing figures to the buyer and all that, the documentation. And then we'll give the numbers to the lender. And then now the lender has a full view of everything, the prorations for taxes, the homeowners association dues, when they're paid, the prorations, has all the miscellaneous and how much is the seller contributing to the buyer side, all that stuff. So they have everything but the loan information. And then we prepare based on their numbers and
So-
deliver.
Some lenders, every lender is different. They're heavily regulated now. They have to have their numbers out to the buyer a minimum of 3 days prior to closing.
Is that happening?
Yes.
It's happening for you down here?
So some lenders send it out the 3 days, and the third day we can close. Some lenders are sending them out 7 days. Some lenders are sending them out 10 days. We have no idea. Whenever the title companies get the numbers from the lender, because they're the ones that are giving us, the blood and guts of the mortgage, and that's what completes our statement and what the cash to close is. We have things to add to it, but once that balancing happens, that's the final. Sometimes your buyers will receive a one before this final happens, just an FYI. It's just, but the final doesn't happen until lender and title company have balanced.
And in my opinion too, sometimes the final is, you guys have to look at it too, because there's been times when, where's the seller credit, where's the credit for the cabinet that broke us, $1,000 credit that's not on there, we didn't have the addendum. We didn't know it was supposed to be on there, so now we have another, you guys look at it and say, well, my buyer is supposed to be getting a credit for $1,000, where is it? So now we gotta go back to the lender and they have to rework their numbers. So it's very important when you get the closing statement or the Alta statement prior to the closing that you really look it over and make sure everything's on there, because we're all human. Sometimes we don't get all the pieces, especially if we're missing an
And that's
addendum
the
to the contract.
progress too, I think, still. People trying to get.
Addendums are
all that,
important.
yeah.
I mean, something happens in the middle of the transaction, if we don't know what we don't know. So if we don't have it, you're gonna get the statement at the last minute and the buyers are on their way and oops. So
There are some things too with the commissions, just to back up, if there's buyer pay commissions, definitely want to know that upfront. It's very crucial to the number process and the lenders, knowing that there's buyer pay commission. The reason that there's buyer, for those that are new, the reason that there's buyer pay commissions is sometimes you're signing with your buyer at 3%, but the seller's agent is only paying out 2 or 2.5. So then your buyer is going to make up that 0.5% difference so that your contract is fulfilled. Any more to add, Tamara?
No.
Same?
No.
Okay.
is that right?
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
Let me do that.
yeah. So the buyer initiates their wire for their closing at least 24 hours before closing or obtains a cashier's check to bring to close. We're all wires up in the cities. Just down here is the only place that we really do the cashier's check thing. And the reason for that is the good funds law. And I don't know, we want to touch on good funds for a minute. I mean, we'll briefly touch on it. So this whole wire and check thing, it's interesting because there is a statute in the state of Minnesota that says that good funds are required. And so when we're closing with the cashier's check, we're cutting seller's proceeds on a check that hasn't even hit our bank yet. And that's a risk that we take. And we do that because of the type of closings that we have here in Minnesota. And so why we like the wire is because then we know the money's good. So we're cutting money to the seller and the money's good. So, but at the same time, there's still conversations about, because the wire fraud, we're still having conversations, maybe the cashier's check is the way to go. What's that gonna mean for the good funds law? And so we're doing some checking on that. I'm not saying anything needs to be changed here at all. You guys keep doing what you're doing. If you do have a buyer that wants to wire, they certainly can, as long as they have our wire instructions. Okay. All right. Closing is conducted at the buyer's table. The lender provides funding authorization. Funds are dispersed. Buyers receive all their documents that they sign. And then the seller's title company shows up, delivers the seller's signed documents to the buyer's title company in exchange for their funds.
So buyers, all banks, really Those documents have to be dated for the day of closing. The notary has to be acknowledged the day of closing. Some cases you can sign in advance, but very
called the dry
rarely,
closing.
they really try to steer clear of that. So buyers always sign on the date of closing. Sellers can pre-sign up until closing time.
And then documents are recorded. And then the policy is sent out, typically, hopefully within 30 days, with a copy of the recorded warranty deed going to the original warranty deed to
It's
the.
a deed that transfer title, and then we record the mortgage behind it. It's all electronic for most counties now.
Which is nice. Some of the things we need to know for a buyer on the buyer side: marital status, obviously, judgment, liens, bankruptcies. It's good to know this stuff up front only because it's going to affect the lender work, and the lender's going to want to know this stuff, you know. So any work is scheduled to be performed. So I had a closing. It was about a year ago when I was still closing, and it was a purchase. And it wasn't long into the closing at the table that I realized that the buyers and the sellers knew each other. They were friends, and the buyers were buying their house, obviously. And they're talking about renovating and doing all this fun stuff and blah 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 blah. So I kind of like perked up a little bit because they're doing all this renovating. You know, we have the mortgage doesn't get recorded instantaneously. Mortgage gets recorded maybe 3 to 5 days later, sometimes longer, depending on the county. And so I had to start asking some questions. And the questions were, have you started any of the work yet? Well, it turned out they had started some of the work already, kind of. They put a dumpster on the property. They kind of tore out some of the carpeting because they're friends. Well, now I have broken priority. Now I've got this situation where we have contractors that have already done work on the house. So now my lender position is going to be a problem. So you can see how that kind of unwound everything. So we had to do priority pictures. We had to go out and get lien waivers at the last minute from all the contractors that have done some things. And so it's important when you're buying a house too, if your customer is going to do work, that they don't start right away. And if they want to start the day that they buy, the day that we close, that's great. But we need to know about it so we can go out and make sure that the dumpster hasn't been delivered yet. And we'll take the documents that we have in our hand and we'll walk them to the county and get them recorded at the county for you so they can start work the next day. Because if we don't record for 5 days and they start their work on the day that they close, we got a lien problem, possible if they don't pay the contractor. So it happens sometimes. So it's always good to know, for us to know, and we'll do the work. We'll get the lien waivers, we'll go to the county, we'll get it recorded for you, we'll walk it through, whatever we need to do.
Just as a precaution, I had one home where the buyers had started the work and burnt the house down. They no longer could buy the house. But anything's possible. Just always
possible.
use your best educated.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that they should be advised to start any work after the closing.
Well,
Typically.
yeah, in this situation, they were friends, so there was nothing we could have done. But if you know they're renovating, I want to know, so I can advise you on the situation. Now, if it's Ramsey County, we can't walk them through, we're gonna have to overnight them and get a special recording happening, then they want to wait. But if it's local, we'll just walk them to the county and walk your documents through. And that way it's a record, now we have our date on it, now they can get to work. So it's just good information for us to have in these scenarios. Happened to me when I bought my house in Arizona. I bought a house, and that was a long time ago when the capital gain tax still applied to selling and buying homes, the difference between the two. And so I'm like, I'll put a swimming pool in. I don't know, I'm moving to Arizona, I'll put a swimming pool in, So I went and bought the house, had the date all set for the swimming pool guy. I wanted him to start right away. It's a dry state there, so we don't have the gap problem. And he's like, no, I can't do it. I'm not gonna be able to do it until September. And we close at the end of July. All right, so we get to closing and find out that they can't find the septic. They can't locate it. So we're not closing on time. Fine, couple day delay on the closing. And so I didn't even think about calling the pool company. Didn't care because he wasn't coming until September, right? My seller, this is a true story. My seller comes home and finds a hole in his backyard. They had had the Bobcat and they had already holed out the entire backyard for my swimming pool. And I get a phone call and they're like, why is there a hole in the backyard of the Joneses or their name house? And I'm like, what? Because I didn't think to call them. So of course we have broken priority. We're getting financials from the pool company. We're getting lien waivers. We're getting all this stuff, but they could have sued me. So I mean, it's stuff that's crazy, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in the business, right? It's happening to me. So it was a pretty crazy transaction. I'm like, oh, how did you feel coming home and finding a big hole in your backyard? So anyway, it does happen. So communication's the key.
It's not a boring business.
It isn't.
It's just not, and you'll always be learning.
You will. And you have a great closer here
It's fun,
and great agents that have been doing this a long time. So no question is a dumb question ever.
Would you agree, lady?
Yeah. I mean, it's great. My whole family's in the business. So Thanksgiving and Christmases were never boring because that's always
Stories.
Stories. Title insurance. I want to end on one thing for title insurance. It's just one story, and there's many of them out there, but this is one that people always say, why do I need title insurance? Well, because we have a gap period here, right? We don't record right away. We record a couple days later, and things can happen. A husband can put a lien against an ex-wife can put a lien against the husband and may not be a record till after he's sold.
I'm gonna back up just a minute.
Mhm.
So in some states, they have to close and they sign and they record before any funds will exchange. We're a same day funding.
Wet state.
Everything happens all the same day.
And where I'm from the West Coast, and so
So
closing.
I just want to explain
Yeah.
to them because there's what gap doesn't mean
Anything
much
to them. Okay. So it didn't mean anything to me when I moved here either, but so and where I'm from on the western states, everything is like a little factory line. So the contract says closing is September 30th. And that's the date that everything funds, not closing, not signing, closed, recorded, done. Loan docs, the contract is also written that loan docs have to be at the title company 3 days prior. And if they're there 2 days prior, then the closing date gets pushed a day. Is there 1 day prior, it gets pushed 2 daes. I mean, it is stringent on those timeframes. So and on the West Coast, everyone signs with the same title company. It's buyer's choice. The seller pays for the owner's coverage. The buyer pays for the lender's coverage. So they all close with the same title company. And so I'll sign the seller first, get all that stuff out of the way. The loan docs will come in 3 days prior. We'll sign the loan documents. They'll bring their funds to close based on the closing date of the 30th. You know, everything's prorated that day. I'll send the package back to the lender. They'll review all the docs, making sure that they have all their conditions and everything's good to go. In the meantime, while they're doing that, I'm getting my recording package ready and I'm sending it to the recorder's office or my recorder's desk, and they're scanning it into a holding area. And then the day of funding, the day of 30th, the lender will call and say, okay, everything's cool, you can record. So my recorder's desk will push a button, and 10 minutes later, a sticker will pop up, and I'll take the sticker and stick it right on the document. And then I call the lender, tell them the recording number, and then they say you can disperse. So it's like a little factory line, you know, so no one's running around and you have time to fix things. So that's the difference between a dry state, you sign early and then you fund later. Closing date's still the same in their mind. They're moving still on the 30th. They're just doing things before to get it done. And here at the wet state, we do everything right away, and recording doesn't happen right away. So
it creates a gap from what can happen down at the county recorder office, because whoever gets there first is in first position.
And we cover that. So our insurance covers that. When you buy owner's policy, we cover that period. So we have a transaction happening and the seller, you know, brother is mad at him for something and he goes and files a lien against him, but it's not a record yet, right? And the buyer takes over and all of a sudden we have a lien on there. That's the buyer's lien now. Seller's not responsible. So buyer doesn't want to pay for the brother's lien of the seller, so we pay for it. So that's the coverage that you get for things like that. And there's other,
So that's going back to that bridge loan. You know, if when the buyer comes in on that seller's property that just took out a bridge loan, it's not recorded. It gets recorded before the new buyer's deed and mortgage, that bridge loan still takes priority before the new buyer's mortgage. That's why we just,
It
those
goes
bridge
in
loans
circles.
are important,
Mhm.
if you know about them.
And so
Sometimes
that,
people don't know about them because maybe they're relocating and they have an agent in a different town or a different state, and they did this without your knowledge.
and so title insurance is important, but the assessment story I had was, you know, we did everything, we get the tax sheet, we call, we get an assessment done, or assessment, if there's any assessment outstanding. And Hennepin County said there were none. I'm like, great. Well, they make mistakes too. And so the buyer didn't want title insurance. She is an investor. She's closed before. She had an E&O, an O&E, sorry.
And that's common.
That's common, and she knows the property's a lot in block, and it's been in the family forever and hasn't transferred hands very often, and she doesn't need title insurance. It's no big deal. So,
But that's going by the wayside. Those statements are kind of
yeah,
falling
we can
away.
thank CFPB for that, but that's another conversation for another time. So, in any event, we close the transaction. She doesn't have title insurance, and about a month later, she gets a bill for $20,000 for an assessment on the property. That's levied to her taxes now. So we're like, okay. So she calls us, right? Because she doesn't realize, she knows she doesn't have title insurance. Why did you miss this? Well, we didn't miss it. Hennepin County failed to disclose it properly. They made the mistake. So $20,000, that's a lot for her to pay. Because guess what? She's paying it. She's paying it. Now, if she had title insurance, she would have filed a claim. We would have gone to Hennepin County and said, you know, what's the problem? Now it's Hennepin County, they're not going to care. They're not going to say, well, we made the mistake, we'll eat it. Some things that people do eat, but they wouldn't eat it. We make it whole, we pay it for her. Because now two things are happening. She has $20,000 she has to pay, but now her payments have gone up with her lender too for her taxes if she doesn't pay it. So if she had title insurance, we would have paid the 20, that would have been her claim, and she would have been fine.
And had, you know, what if she paid the, you know, whatever the premium would have been, $5,000, $7,000,
Mhm.
whatever it was,
Yeah.
I don't know how much the house was, based on sales price.
Yeah, so that's a big
It would have
assessment.
saved, it would have saved her, in essence, $19,000.
Yeah, so she didn't have title insurance because she didn't need it. So it's stuff like that. This stuff does happen. I mean, there's more claims out there than you think when it comes, especially with the bigger title companies. They're there for little things. So, you guys have any
There was
questions?
a lot of
information.
I don't know, did you think it was good?
Oh, absolutely.
Tamara?
Find value.
I mean, I get that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's constantly, you're just constantly learning. So don't get too frustrated, overwhelmed.
No
It just
one deal is
doesn't-
ever the same.
Never, and that's
No.
the best part of I think
No
your
one
guys' job.
deal
No
is
one
the
deal will
same.
ever be the same. I like
And
writing.
no people are the same.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes that's, thank God.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, we've had some fun, isn't it? We've had some fun stories.
Oh, it's
I mean,
fun to look back.
I mean, there's some funny stories too. Doing a closing, my seller, he's there with a woman, and, you know, I think it's his wife, because, you know, he's married, I think it's his wife, and the realtor comes in on the other side and brings her assistant, her partner, for whatever reason. I think the realtor had to leave early, and so the assistant, was gonna stay and collect the checks to take them back. And the assistant comes in and goes, "Oh, hi, Bob, I haven't seen you in a while. Where's Sandy?" Wasn't his wife sitting next to him, it was somebody else that he brought in to have sign off on the document. I mean, it's stuff like that. You're just like, what? She had an identification. She had everything, and he
She
wasn't-
had the name.
She had an ID card or a card or a driver's
Oh,
license,
my
everything.
God.
It was, I don't know, it was some kind of document, and it was a driver's license, a fraudulent driver's license. But had the assistant hadn't been there, I wouldn't have known.
Nope.
I mean, it's stuff like that. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. So I just kind of stepped out of the room with my agent, was like, what's going on? And the other agent, my agent didn't know because he had never met the wife,
So you were on the buyer's side.
buyer side.
Got it.
Yep.
How would anybody?
Oh, yeah.
There are some sneaky people out there. I'm not joking. There's some, I mean, the stuff like that, and you're just like, hi Bob, where's Joe? Where I think it was Joan was her name. Where's Sandy? And he's
Well,
like,
I think it was Tamara and I, we had a loan officer in our closing, where she had recently just had her, an entity buying, property, investment, I think it was, it must have been investment, but they falsified their tax returns, and she had to turn them into the IRS.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things, buy or sale, there's lots of things that
Yeah.
go on.
I just sold a property contingent on the neighbor giving the lady quarter of an acre to rent from him for a pony.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's
oh
right.
my God.
Yes,
Yeah, that's cute.
It just doesn't end.
That's
No,
cute. And
we got it.
You got a pony. That's so funny.
I'm
That's,
gonna have a sandwich.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yes, yes.
There's just all kinds of crazy things that happen. So it's eyes open, ears open.
There's nothing that, never think that it's gonna be a straightforward deal, because even when you come to Amanda, there could be something. Just know it.
Yeah, expect the
Nothing is the
worst
same.
and then hope for the best. Yeah.
Back in the day when we were on the short sales,
Ugh.
deals that we thought were good
Oh, yeah.
weren't necessarily good, and we had to get a hold of IRS or state. Remember that $30,000 one?
They love me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still
Yeah.
burned, but they
Oh,
love
yeah.
me.
And again, relationship issues, I keep saying it because I mean it.
No,
They're-
we got a short
they're the
sale, you
biggest
guys,
deal ever.
where the seller was short on her closing. So I got the bank to go through with everything. And they
It must
did-
have been before the sheriff's sale that you started this.
It
and then
was.
The sheriff's
It was
sale
before
went
the sheriff's
through.
sale, and then the sheriff's sale went through, so they foreclosed on the property. However, we were, at that time, we still had the 6 months, so I called an attorney and I said,
There was a typo in the sheriff's sale.
or they
You
just,
think?
they just goofed, or they didn't care. But the lender went in and bought the property for less money than owed. So of course, the attorney says, close it today.
Yeah.
You're done, close it, get it closed.
Did they do a short redemption? Did they shorten the redemption?
They said,
No, so she thought she was in a short sale. She ended up making $30,000.
my sellers got a check for $30,000, and they hadn't made a payment on their house
That's a good
in
day.
years.
Is that the one that was 2 years they hadn't made a payment?
Yeah.
Yeah, they hadn't made a payment 2 years.
Well,
And
give
they
it a
got a check
skippity.
for $30,000.
Hopefully it goes around Christmas.
And I'm going, what?
I know.
How does this
And
happen?
yeah, so did they have keep, no, they didn't have
Mhm.
keep that money? They
I
didn't?
said, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm just saying, yeah.
Did they buy
We-
through a closing yet?
We had to pay off the sheriff, that was it. We're
Oh,
done.
yeah, and foreclosure stuff too, it
Yeah,
can be
you
kind of
love
crazy.
people, don't love me, I had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Oh, wow, well, lucky then, that's a lucky day. Yeah,
It was
so,
amazing, yes.
It's just bizarre though. And then I had another one where I had a $400,000 property. I had a cash deal. It was cash for $400,000 and the bank said, oh, we don't have time to look at it.
Yeah.
We're not closing it.
Yeah.
So they turned around and sold it for $60,000 less because Mr. and Mrs. Seller went through and cleaned out the house.
oh gosh, piping and all the stuff,
It's like, really?
yeah.
Why would you ever do that? And I said, maybe that was one I should have turned into our attorney general.
I would have,
How do you know what to do and what not
I
to
know
do?
exactly, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Did you get a goodie bag?
Yes, it is.
It's terrible.
Yeah, so, anyway, so, you guys find value in this?
Yeah, very much.
Definitely,
Thank
okay,
you.
okay, well then we'll do it again,
Thank
and
you.
with the other, newer agents or any other agents, I like the experienced agents are here, because that's good feedback for
Yeah,
us
that
too.
helps. Yeah, it was
Definitely.
nice to bounce and.
Yeah.
Experiencing.
Well, yeah, they can attest to what we're saying, that's the good part.
Yeah.
So, well, good, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, and Amanda will take care of you, I just know it.
Yeah, we have an open door, question, always open door, whether we're involved or not.
But she
I
doesn't-
honestly have an open door policy.
Yeah, if you're working with
I'm
another
gonna call my
title
buyer
company
right now
for whatever reason,
and tell her
and you're
that.
just like,
And
well, wait a
then
second, I don't.
I gave him your card the other day, because I met with him on Saturday to sign the contract, so
Yeah.
if they just, I don't know.
When's the closing date? What's the closing date?
We don't have a set closing
Okay.
date, because it was in like an online auction, so I think the contract is probably within like 30 days, so I just assumed it would be like the 1st of November.
Maybe there's
It
different
just,
structures
you know,
for the
sometimes
for
those
the
are
other
really
one.
finicky
Yeah.
contracts, so that's all. I'm just cautioning you
Yeah.
two is that,
I'll tell her and see what they say.
okay.
Thank you.
You're
Thanks
talking
you guys
about,
for lunch. It's just so
Yeah.
nice.
you talking about another organization you went to?
Yeah.
Where, tell me about it, tell me.
No, this is our bold training. that we
Oh,
did.
okay.
Yeah. They were, I don't know, they're on a tangent that day. Get to the back of the room, sign up right now.
To me, it seemed like
Get to the
more
back
of
of
a
the room, sign up right now. I
sales
just sat down, I have no idea what you guys are doing. I'm not gonna go back.
That's
and
the
sign
first,
up.
that's the first.
Like, is
the
this
first
a timeshare?
The first day is, the first day
Yeah,
is
the first
everybody
day is
comes,
trying-
yeah.
And they've always got
That's why it's
vendors,
free, they're
you know, come
trying
back
to-
and
They
see
wanna
you
sell
and
out.
buy this here.
Yeah, and then, so the first, yeah, and
But I already knew that. so-
But is it valuable to you when they're trying to
it's more
push it on
valuable,
you so hard?
I think it's more valuable to the vendors, because we wanted to be on the first
Yeah.
day for,
Yeah.
well, Connie did, wanted to be there for the first day, and I know no one got old. But when talking to agents, they're like, actually, the steps are the better days either, because the ones that are doing the steps are the ones that are there to build their business, and they're the ones who get that personal touch with. And the first is a free-for-all.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather have one-on-one special time.
To me, if you have somebody that really has a good business flow, that is making money, that says, here's what I've done, and to build my career to where I'm at now, that's fine. But to me, the guy that was doing it just didn't sound believable.
Yeah, well.
You know,
and
he's
that's-
talking about how wonderful his real estate business is, and how well he's doing, and
What is he
how he
doing?
connects with people, but then he talks about his tour schedule, and it's like,
Yeah,
me more than anybody else knows, when you're on the road 200 days a year, there's not a whole lot getting done.
Well,
Hands down,
If you
there's
were
a
to
lot
say,
of value.
if you were to say, my
So
assistants are
it's-
doing this, or my team is
Well, he has
doing
a
this.
team doing it now.
Right.
Because what happens is, they want you to build to the 7th level if you have a team, okay? That's the big thing about Keller Williams. You have a team to build to 7th level, and you can walk away from your business, however, you're still making money from your business, because your team is all afloat, okay? That's why they go out and they start bowl coaching, and they start being mastery coaches, because their team is that big, they can do that. However, when you're a brand new agent walking in, and you have somebody standing up in front of the room stating these things,
it's so far away.
you can't even fathom what the heck they're even talking about, and I get that. The thing I will tell you is, Bold has